Do you suffer from chronic sinusitis? When you scuba dive, does it feel like your sinuses just cannot equalize? Whenever you're experiencing a drastic change in altitude, does it feel like your teeth are about to jettison themselves out of your face? I know I did. That was until I found relief through sinus surgery. Good evening and welcome to Rest and Rec. I'm Church. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about my sinus surgery experience. Okay, so before we get into it, let me tell you how I felt before I got the sinus surgery. So, I didn't have any issues on land. I mean, minor allergies like seasonally, but nothing major. But then there was scuba diving. Whenever I dove, I get down about 15 or so feet, and I could feel the pressure building up in my forehead, in my cheeks, and worst of all, what felt like in my gums and my teeth. My teeth hurt so bad sometimes that I would come close to biting through the mouthpiece of my regulator. So what was happening was the water pressure was putting pressure on my sinuses and they weren't able to equalize, and these maxillary sinuses actually barely touch the roots of the upper teeth. So as that pressure was building up, it was putting pressure on my teeth, and that was what was causing extreme amounts of pain. Honestly, it hurts so bad, it's hurting me just talking about it right now. Then there were the post-dive migraines. My sinuses would be so inflamed after a dive, it would sometimes hurt for hours afterward. I remember when this first started happening. It started happening in January of this year whenever I was diving in Florida. Completely unrelated, that's just when my body decided to start acting up. See, I thought what I was experiencing was a reverse block. And a reverse block is where mucus is blocking the hole to the sinus and it doesn't allow it to equalize the air pressure. Now that would have made sense, but the thing is I was feeling the exact same sinus pain, while not as bad, even while skydiving. Even though there's not as much pressure change while skydiving, that rapid change in altitude was causing me similar sinus pain. Okay, so I may have gotten a little ahead of myself. Equalizing, for those of you who don't know, is whenever you have the air pockets that are inside of your body, sinuses, eardrums, teeth cavities, any of these places where you could have air pockets, it's whenever you equalize that air pressure with the outside air pressure, or if you're scuba diving, water pressure. The higher you are in the sky or in the water, the less pressure you have on you. And the inverse is also true. The deeper you are, the more pressure you have on you. A lot of people experience this whenever they rapidly drive up a mountain. They're always having to equalize their ears, like pop their ears to keep up with the changing altitude. So what was happening to me? So my sinuses were not able to circulate air because the openings were completely being sealed off while I was descending. It's a condition called turbinate hypertrophy. There was no amount of ear popping, jaw rotation, swallowing, nose holding, nothing was equalizing my sinuses. I also had septal deviation, which was further constricting the airflow to my sinuses. The pain was destroying my desire to dive. I had to do something about it. I went to see Dr. Lewis at Charlotte Ear, Nose, and Throat. My first visit to Dr. Lewis involved a 3D x-ray of my head and sinuses, and a thorough explanation of what I just explained to you. He recommended 3 procedures: Balloon Sinuplasty, Septoplasty, and turbinate reduction. All 3 could be done in one operation. And while I was still awake. The first thing he did was numb the inside of my nose. Even though it was a local anesthetic, the liquid that they injected up inside my nose naturally ran down the back of my throat and got into my mouth, numbing everything it touched. So I just got my nose numbed. And it's weird because like my front 4 teeth are going numb. Also the back of my throat's starting to go numb too. Some people freak out whenever they get that anesthetic in their throat because they can't feel themselves swallow. Next, he stuck a camera up my nose to see what all he needed to cut out and open up. So up inside the nose, there's a whole bunch of tiny little bones that keep the nose's structure and keep these holes permanently open. In order for him to fix me, he was going to have to break a lot of them. First up, the balloon sinuplasty. The way this worked was he stuck the straw you see him holding here up my nose to the opening of my sinuses. When the nozzle was in position, he pushed out a light on the end of a wire through the sinus opening. The light was bright enough to be seen through the skin. The purpose of the light was to make sure the wire was actually in the sinus before deploying the balloon. This is what you saw me doing in the thumbnail of this video. Once he knew he was in the right place, he pushed out the balloon which he positioned in the opening of the sinus. Now this is the actual sinuplasty. Once the balloon was set, he inflated the balloon with liquid and it broke the sinus airway wide open. This is the actual tool he used just on the outside of my head.
Rock hard, and then you have a deflect the balloon and pull everything back.
Now the septoplasty and turbinate reduction were not as much fun, I guess you could say. The septoplasty didn't require him to break my septum, but he did remove a lot of bone mass. The turbinate reduction, which you see here, involved cutting out several small bones and tissue in and around the sinus openings. I could hear him cutting through the bone and the tissue inside my face. If I had to compare it to something, it would be like having like a box of matchsticks and just slowly crumpling them up, like that crumpling noise, except it was coming from inside my head. Very weird experience. Now, the surgery itself only took about 2 hours. After he was done, he used really long tweezers and placed these cloths deep up inside my nose up against where he was cutting. And then I was on my way. For the next day or so, I kept a pretty constant nosebleed. He gave me a nasal spray to squirt up inside my nose to help cauterize the bleeding. I'd say the worst part about the whole experience was the fact that I wasn't able to skydive or scuba dive for 2 whole weeks after I got the surgery. The good news is after the 2 weeks were up, I was able to scuba dive, and there was absolutely no pain at any depth. Well, that's my sinus surgery experience. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to leave it in the comments section below, or message me directly if it's private. If you like content like this, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, that way you never miss a new video. This has been Church with Rest and Rec.